Hi all. Yes, it's been quite a while. What happens? Work gets in the way. What can you do? Today I'm going to talk about Israel and Iran, the postal service between the two, which is basically non-existent. And one of the things I like to deal with is postal history. And postal history goes together with history. Now let Graham Beck explain to you what it's all about.
Exposed to the good, the fascinating, the exciting, the heroic, and the inspiring histories. And then there's the uncomfortable, the difficult, and the horrifying histories that can be found on stamps. What a philatelist can find and hold in their hands are pieces of real and important history, and there is no filter or curriculum or agenda other than that of what the government or postal service chose to put on their stamps at that point in time.
Stay with me for this episode of Let's learn a little bit about what happened.
The Pahlavi dynasty of Iran was founded by Reza Shah Pahlavi and ruled between 1925 and 1979. In 1953 things got a bit dicey in Iran. Mohammad Reza Pahlavi performed coup d'état and overthrew the democratically elected Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh. Pahlavi then aligned Iran with the United States and the Western Bloc, receiving weapons as well as other goods. He relied heavily on support from the United States to hold on to power, which he held for a further 26 years. This was part of a problem that was brewing for years.
In 1963, a religious leader who was stewing up trouble, Ayatollah Khomeni, was arrested and eventually exiled. Khomeini didn't stop causing trouble for the Shah, and as late as 1977 there was civil resistance against him. January 1979, the Shah left Iran and went into exile. Ayatollah Khomeini was invited back to Iran by the government, and returned to Tehran, to a greeting by several thousand Iranians. The Iranian people voted in a national referendum, to become an Islamic republic on 1 April 1979, and approved a new theocratic republican constitution. Khomeini became supreme leader of the country in December 1979.
America then became the Great Satan and Israel, being aligned with America, became the Little Satan.
We all remember the takeover of the American embassy and the hostages that were kept there and whatever happened afterwards. But one of the things that did happen was the postal service between Iran and Israel stopped. I haven't really made a video of it, but one of the things I like collecting is something called pas de service. Now, pas de service means no relations. And there were no relations between Iran and Israel, or no postal relations. In essence, it's the same thing. And letters that happened to arrive in Iran, meant for Israel, had received a hand stamp, a cancellation, and were returned to sender. Take a look at this example. In this particular case, this is a postcard sent from the States to Israel and happened to land up in Iran. Now, even with a postcard, you don't have a returning address. So obviously Iran returned it to the United States because then they still had some kind of relations. And obviously it arrived in Israel because it got to me eventually. But what happened was because it arrived in the States and the States didn't have there was no returning address, the only thing that the United States could do was to forward it to Israel. And that's how it got here. Now, how does this happen? We all make mistakes. We're humans. We make mistakes. The sorter when he's sorting the mail to be sent, looks at the mail and he sees, oh, this is supposed to be for Israel. Okay, I'll throw it into the Israel pile. And he misses it and it goes into the Iran pile because IR comes just before IS. In this case, this postcard received, there is no postal relations between Israel and Iran. Now, there are Jews in Iran, and there's no postal relations. And the Jews in Iran are actually quite scared to send mail. They're scared to have any dealings with Israel because the Secret Service is all the time watching them. So what are we going to do? In the late 1990s, in other words, last century, or a very, very long time ago, 30 years ago, we had to pay for auction catalogs. We could ask for the first one free, and once we bought something, we got kind of a subscription for that year. And every time we bought something, we could get an auction sent to us for free for that entire year. And when I got a catalog, I used to scan through the pictures. Why do I scan through the pictures? The reason is simple. I'm a thematic collector, and say you collect dogs, and you scan through an auction catalog, and you all of a sudden see a fancy cancel showing a dog, and something you've never seen, or something you've been looking for a long time, and decide to buy it. Now, sometimes in the description, you cannot notice that from the description. You can look for a fancy cancel under United States, for example, but who knows? Maybe there's a fancy cancel from another country that you didn't know of. And that's what I do. So one day I was looking through an auction catalog and I saw this image. Now, what is it? It's the letter sent from Iran to Switzerland, but also has an address in Tel Aviv. And that is what piqued my interest. Now, what is even stranger is the entire lot was sent to a specific post office box in Geneva, Switzerland. So I bought this lot. It only had about 4 or 5 different covers. I received it, and I didn't understand the Persian writing on the letter. So I approached one of my friends at work, whose parents were originally from Iran, and she managed to translate it. And she said to me, "You know what? This postal address is very, very familiar to me." And I said, "Yes." And she said, "You know what? Wait a minute. We wait until the Israel Broadcast Authority broadcast the news in Persian, and wait until the end." And then she said, "Eureka! That's what it is." And she said, "The address is P.O. Box 152 in Geneva. We broadcast a daily news in Farsi. Let us set up a post box in Switzerland for people in Iran to send to their post box an undercover address. They'll send it to this post box, and when it arrives there, someone there will open it or readdress it to someone in Israel according to the address," which is an excellent idea. It's not a new idea. There's ideas go back far away, and the most famous from the Second World War was P.O. Box 506 in Lisbon, Portugal. So what happened? People bought a few stamps to use as postage. Now, in many cases, people using the service, Jews in Iran, didn't want the secret services to censor their mail. So we used to put the stamps on the letter and put them in the postbox without their home address. They were scared that the Secret Service would get in touch with them. In some cases, they didn't even put on stamps. I don't have an example of that. I already sold it, but I do have other examples, as you can see here. Obviously, when this arrived in Geneva and was cleared by a member of the Israeli embassy in Geneva, there was often a scare that it was going to be a letter bomb. And here we can see an example. It's actually one of the rarest I've seen of an item that was checked by the Israeli security officer, and as you can see, a signature over here, to make sure there were no bombs. Only when they were sure was it forwarded to Israel. Now, in essence, people from other countries with no relations with Israel could also use that service. And here's an example that I have from Pakistan that they were using that. Since I found all the information, only barely a few months later, the postbox was changed. I assume that this address was changed every so often, so as people would not catch on. Interestingly enough, I have been searching for similar items. I haven't seen any others. So these are pretty rare or extremely difficult to find. Well, thank you for listening. Stay tuned for the next episode. In the meantime, take care. Bye.